Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. Really appreciate you tuning in. This is some pretty valuable information that we're going to be sharing tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about what happens when we're not satisfied, when we can't experience reward, when we can't experience joy and peace. The repercussions of that are what's called addiction or compulsion. So tonight's information, I'm going to ask everybody to share this as much as you can, because knowing this can not only improve your life and those that you love, but it could actually save someone's life. One of the most common reasons for people to take their own lives, whether that's consciously or unconsciously through risk-taking behaviors, is because they have some sort of addiction or compulsion, as well as addictions and compulsions are involved in the vast majority of the leading causes of death in today's world. So tonight's class very well could be life-saving. We're going to go ahead and jump in. So I'm going to share my screen here, if I can find the right button. And as with all classes, please feel free to ask questions along the way. Because I'm sharing my screen, I'm not quite sure that I will be able to see those. But if you type them in the chat, whether you're watching on Zoom live or whether you're watching on Facebook live or sometime in the future, go ahead and type into the comment section or the chats. And at the end of this, I will try to answer all of the questions that I can. And we will just check in on this on a fairly frequent basis for any comments that are left on the Facebook boards. Here we go. So, addiction. This is living outside of the light of well-being. And I am Dr. Tad at Organic Living Chiropractic. And there's our contact information at the bottom. So, what is addiction? The basic definition of addiction is the continued use of any substance or behavior despite negative consequences. Now, many times, especially because of the society that we live in, we kind of look down upon people that have addictions. We're thinking about the heroin addict, we're thinking about the junkie on the street. However, addiction is a disease. And the reason that it's a disease is because it has a predictable progression. It has a series of events and a series of symptoms that come out in predictable times and in predictable ways, but it also has a predictable way of recovery. So despite popular belief, addiction is not just bad choices. It's not just a lack of morals. It's not just laziness. It is an actual dysfunction. It is an actual disease, exactly like cancer or heart disease or diabetes. And it would be very beneficial in our society if we could recognize the shame culture that we've created around addictions, and we wouldn't treat somebody with cancer the way that we would somebody with say a cocaine addiction. So just keep that in mind. Compassion with all things is the key to healing and recovery. But what you really pay attention to that definition, the continued use of any substance or behavior despite negative consequences, right? How many of us, if we really look at our behavior, how many of us can find patterns of behaviors that we do again and again? They don't work out, but yet we keep doing them. How many times do we find ourselves excessively worrying about things that we have no control over? That worry doesn't produce any positive benefit. It makes our day worse. It makes everyone's day around us worse, but yet we keep doing it. How many times do we find ourselves getting angry in situations when it's just like, why did I even get in this situation in the first place? Why am I yelling at the TV? Why am I bringing up politics at the holiday dinner table? I know this is not going to end up well, but yet we're like compelled to do so. So, if the definition of an addiction is a substance or behavior that continues to be used despite negative consequences, don't we all have some sort of addiction? It may not be to some drug on the outside. It may be to some chemical cascade inside of our body, like shame or guilt or worry or fear or anger or righteousness, judgmentalism. There are many, many different behaviors and substances that we use on a regular basis. And despite negative consequences, we keep using them. So, the cause of all addictions, whether they're a substance or behavior on the outside or whether they're something on the inside, is that we have been ignoring the calling to become our true selves. We've been ignoring the process and the progress of shedding all of our pre-programming, all of our subconscious patterns, and getting into the state of being, getting into the place in life that we're really, really called to be in. So, the hallmark of addiction, how we know addiction is present, is denial. Refusing to accept the reality. And just look at the definition. If it's a behavior or a substance that keeps being used despite negative consequences, it's like those negative consequences are telling us this needs to be stopped. And we will find all sorts of rationales and reasons to continue to utilize whatever it is that we're addicted to, even though reality is telling us this is not the way to go. We will refuse to acknowledge what's going on. We will rationalize. And that's why another one of the hallmarks of addiction is irrational thoughts and behaviors. We're not thinking clearly. Now, addiction, again, because it's a disease, there is a physiological dysfunction that's happening. There's a part of our body that's screaming and calling and raging for whatever it is that produces this chemistry that our cells have been habituated to. And again, that could be, something like feeling bad about ourselves, being the victim in life. But once our cells become habituated to some sort of chemistry, whether that's internal or whether that comes in from the outside, they will start to signal us when it's time for the next load of that chemistry. And so, in order to rationalize why we need to do this, we will come up with some crazy, crazy rationales. And it is very irrational as long as you're on the outside looking in. But if you're in the thick of it, you can't distinguish between an irrational thought and a behavior because the body is just driving us to get this fix. So I want you to really think about your life. I want you to really think about the patterns and the things in your life that you don't like, but yet are not changing. What is it that you're addicted to? If we can identify the addictions that we have ourselves, it's going to be a whole lot easier to bring love and compassion and to support to people that have more challenging addictions, people that are more marginalized because of their addictions. And marginalizing people, pushing them away, shunning them is never, ever, ever going to help them, nor is it going to help us. Now, With that said, there's a time and a place to put some distance between yourself and someone else if an addiction, whether it's theirs or whether it's yours, is causing you so much harm that there needs to be a healing and something that changes within you before there can be a re-engaging. But whether it's you or whether it's someone else, someone that has an addiction needs outside intervention. Otherwise, there is not going to be any progress because denial and irrational thoughts and behaviors will make it impossible for the addicted person to help themselves. So, another term for addiction is called reward deficiency syndrome. Now, reward deficiency syndrome is much bigger than just what we would think of as addiction. But basically, there is a chemical pathway within the base part of our brain, within the middle section down towards the bottom. And it has to do with some neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, some enkephalons, GABA. Whenever these are out of balance, whenever these certain parts of our brain either cannot be stimulated or are stimulated too much, we will lose the ability to feel reward. Okay. And if you look at that picture over on the right hand side of your screen, if you look at the little blue dot and you look to the middle right of that blue dot, you'll see the word opioid. Now, we have certain receptor sites. We have certain areas, certain antennas that stick outside of our cells. And those antennas are specially shaped for opioids. We have other antennas that are specially shaped for cannabinoids or cannabis, what most people think of as externally as marijuana. We have hallucinogenic receptors on the outside of our cells. We have these receptors, we have these sites to grab hold of opioids and cannabinoids and hallucinogens, not because we're supposed to be taking drugs. We have these receptor sites on our cells because our body actually makes these chemicals that are found in poppies, that are found in marijuana, that are found in LSD and ayahuasca. Our body actually makes these compounds. Why? Why would our body make these compounds? Well, ask anybody that's taken any of these drugs. They feel good. They make us feel amazing. Now, again, we don't have these receptor sites to be taking drugs from the outside. We have them because we are biologically wired to feel amazing when we do something that's really, really good, really beneficial, not only for ourselves, but for others. And if we are doing something really beneficial for a lot of people, the reward is super, super high. And that's a lot of times why you will hear major performers that will go out in front of audiences of thousands and thousands of people, and they'll get this performer's high because they are sitting there making thousands of people's lives better. So isn't this amazing? Like, we're biologically wired to have a reward when we do something positive. But what happens whenever we can't get access to that reward? Well, we do something positive, but it doesn't necessarily feel any better. We do something positive, everyone else tells us this is good, but we don't feel good. Now, what happens if you don't feel good for years? What happens if you were born with a propensity to never feel good? And then all of a sudden you come along and you're offered a substance, and for the first time in your life, maybe years, you're actually able to feel good. One of the biggest challenges that we have is that most of us going around thinking that everyone feels the way that we do. And this is a massive, massive lie. Everybody has a very, very unique experience and perspective on life. Two people can go through the same situation and have two totally different results of this. So it's easy to look down upon somebody that's gotten caught up in using some external substance to feel good. But if we're looking down on them, we need to feel blessed because that means we actually have the ability to feel good. And until we've walked a mile in somebody else's shoes, we need to be very, very careful about the judgments that we put on each other. Because if those judgments create separation, separation doesn't get rewarded with this brain chemistry. Unity does. So, this reward cascade is made up of some basic components in different parts of our brain. But the first part of this would be serotonin, and this is a neurotransmitter. And this is made up of fat and proteins for the most part. And that stimulates a certain portion of our cells, of our brain. And then that portion of our brain releases enkephalins. And whenever enkephalins get released, they actually inhibit a neurotransmitter called GABA. Now, GABA is our smooth and relaxed and calm neurotransmitter. Too much GABA can actually lead to a type of depressive state. So, whenever GABA is inhibited, whenever it's slowed down, our brain in another part starts to release more dopamine. Dopamine is the main neurotransmitter that leads to a sense of satisfaction and bliss. And it just, oh, this is so, so amazing. So, serotonin is kind of our get up and go. We want to make things happen. Everything feels great because we're moving forward. GABA is our slowing down, tuning off, turning off, tuning out. And dopamine is our satiation, and it just feels good. So, anytime that we have trouble either making the building block or using the building blocks to make serotonin, enkephalin, or dopamine, anytime that we have too few receptor sites, anytime that our body cannot build up and store serotonin, enkephalin, or dopamine, we're going to have a challenge getting the reward experience at the end of this cascade. And if we don't feel good for long enough, we will seek some sort of thing outside of us, whether it's a behavior like like some sort of self-soothing, a tick, whether it is some sort of substance like drugs or food. We will seek something outside of us in order to try to stimulate this reward cascade and get some sense of satisfaction and feeling good. So the next time that we're around family, because family is great at bringing all of this stuff up to the surface of not feeling good, which again, not feeling good has a purpose. It tells us that something needs to change. But when we're around family and we start to notice these old habits coming at, just stop and just recognize, ooh, I'm falling back into an addictive pattern. Or look out if you have enough awareness to be able to check into yourself first. Then look out and go, oh, okay, who else is going into these addictive patterns? Because remember, these patterns are predictable. And if they're predictable and you can observe them, you'll know when to step in and make a change so that everybody can actually start feeling good. So, in the reward deficiency syndrome, this doesn't just cover what most of us think of as addictions. This actually covers all affective or behavioral disorders like ADD, low self esteem, Tourette syndrome, conduct disorders like not being able to control yourself, compulsive disorders, antisocial personality disorders, staying away from people, being scared of the outside, learning disorders like dyslexia, gambling, hyperactive disorders, depression, anxiety, and even autistic syndromes. All have a massive, massive component of a reward deficiency syndrome. So, learning about this and knowing about this opens the door for us to be able to help a lot of people including ourselves. Because if you look at this list and you think about all of the things that you or others can't stop doing, even though they don't want to do it and it doesn't feel good, we all know a lot of people that fall under the category of having a reward deficiency syndrome. So there's a lot of different reasons that we can fall into this reward deficiency syndrome or addiction. Some of this can be genetic. Now, genetic disposition gets a really bad rap. It gets blamed for a lot. Remember that you can turn on and you can turn off a gene based on how you treat the cells of your body and how they respond to the outside world. So just because we have inherited a certain genetic expression and tendency does not mean that we are going to be expressing this particular way of being. So genetic dispositions are not as common as most people think they are. And even if we do have them, they're not as black and white as most people think they are. Another common cause for the reward deficiency syndrome is going to be a neurotransmitter defect. And again, we already talked about some of those neurotransmitters. Another common cause is stress in our environment for too long and not handled appropriately. That can cause a reward deficiency syndrome. Immune system alterations can cause reward deficiency syndrome. Drug abuse, obviously. Nutritional deficiencies and nutritional excesses can also cause a reward deficiency alteration. Hormonal imbalances. And lastly, and this is what chiropractors focus on, is a primary subluxation. Okay, that is a portion of our musculoskeletal system that is mechanically interfering with the shape of our nervous system. Now, we can kind of think of our nervous system almost like a guitar string. Okay, if there's too much pull or too little pull, too much slack, that's going to alter the way that our nervous system can communicate. And if our nervous system is altered in its ability to communicate, we're going to experience, we're going to process, and we're going to express very, very distorted ways of being. So if we get into some sort of a physical trauma, if we have a repetitive emotional trauma or a massive emotional trauma that's not able to be not able to be integrated and healed from, if we have an environmental trauma, if we have a chemical trauma, all of these things can distort our nervous system to the point where we can't get ourselves out of that unstuck position. And this is an amazing time to have a really good professional like a chiropractor or another professional that can focus on the distortions of the nervous system. So, what is addictive? Well, believe it or not, any substance or behavior that changes the way that you feel can be addictive. That's anything. So we could literally have an addiction to anything. And there are some really weird addictions out there. We're not necessarily going to go into it. But again, think of this as a little bit more close to home. What is it that you do for comfort? And is what you do for comfort, is it really, really beneficial? Can you find any things that you do to soothe yourself or comfort yourself that may be detrimental, maybe harmful to your body, to your environment, to the people around you? And I bet if we look hard enough, we can all find some component of this ourselves. So, according to the American College of Addictionology and Compulsive Disorders, there's 5 main addictions. Okay, number 1 is food. I probably have a little bit of this myself, but you know what? Hey, we all got faults. So, the next one would be sex. The third is work. Now, this one is a very, very common, but very misunderstood and ignored addiction. And this is the addiction of being productive, the addiction of just doing and doing and doing and doing and doing and doing and doing. And then eventually down the road, the person looks around and like nothing's really been accomplished that much. And, lots of things have been accomplished, but that person's not really that happy. They're not satisfied with what they've accomplished. So I get in my office a lot of very amazing human doings. But ideally, remember, we're all human beings. The fourth is gambling. Now, gambling is not just going to the casino, although that one is definitely, what most people think of. It's any risk-taking behavior. So we could think of stealing as a risk-taking behavior, and some people are addicted to stealing, called kleptomania. We could think of lying as a risk-taking behavior. We could think of, extreme sports as risk-taking behavior. There is a lot of risk-taking behaviors that give us that little zing up our spine, and these very much can become addictive if we're using them on a repetitive basis in order to alter the way that we feel. Shopping can be a risk-taking behavior. Lots and lots of people have really dug themselves into a deep debt hole by having the addiction of gambling through shopping. And then five is the most common one that most people think of. And this is chemicals, drugs, alcohol, these sorts of things. However, I think that there should be a sixth addiction. And the sixth addiction, I think we could call distress. How many of us are addicted to finding and thinking and ruminating about things that are wrong? Things that are wrong with ourselves, things that are wrong with society, things that are wrong with other people. Now, there's nothing wrong with really being able to honestly say, hey, this could be improved. But it's the ruminating about things that we have no control over. Okay. It's the habitual use of news media sites and television and drama on TV and soap operas. This is an addiction that I would actually call distress. Now, granted, this could definitely fall into the chemical substances because any of this worry, fear, judgment, anxiety, all of this is definitely a chemical component. So technically, this could fall under drugs, but these would be the internal drugs that we would make on our own that are very destructive, but yet we keep doing them again and again and again. And if you really want to observe some of this, again, the holidays are the best time to observe this in our family because these things are definitely going to come up. So, like I said before, addiction is a disease because there is a predictable progression of symptoms and a predictable pathway out of this as well. Don't forget about that. So, the first stage of addiction is experimental. Okay, we're out just trying it. Okay, this is kind of the innocent phase. And a lot of this is actually done in our childhood whenever it comes to internal chemistry. It's done in our teenage years with external chemistry. It's done in our young adult years with things like risk-taking behavior and work and sex and things like this. But after we've started experimenting and we get our first taste of it, then we start to move into the second stage, which is social, which is we use this on occasion, just to alter our mood, maybe have a little bit more fun, maybe relax a little bit more in a situation that we may be a little bit uncomfortable in. And, it's something that we know about and we can use every once in a while, but it's not necessarily a part of our life. But if this keeps going on, we'll eventually get into the third stage, which is dependence. Dependence is when we start to plan to use these things. It starts to become part of our regular routine. It starts to become a part of our weekly, if not daily life. Okay, and then it moves into addiction, in which we can't actually stop doing it, even if we really wanted to. Now, addiction is again, once those negative consequences start being experienced, and yet we keep going. So the challenge is that once a true addiction has been reached, unless some sort of outside intervention occurs, unless some sort of help is received, unless sort of treatment is given, there's actually only three end results that can happen. And that's institutionalization, jail, or death. Now, kind of a bummer here, but just to recognize how important it is to be connected in community. Because without community, without somebody that really loves us, without somebody that really loves a person that has gotten into an addiction, there is no way out of this on their own. So if we want to think about the one true cure for addiction, it's actually being connected to others. Real connection. The cure for addiction is the experience of well-being. Okay, however we need to get that. All right. And the experience of well-being is going to have some components of satisfaction, being satiated. Okay. It's good. I'm not in need. Okay. But once we get that, the next step up is peace, where we're like, oh, yeah, you know what? Really, nothing. This is perfect, exactly like it is. And then the next step up from that is joy, where it's like, wow, not only is this exactly is this good, nothing needs to change, this is really amazing, like I actually like this. And at the very top of the list, we've got love. These are the goals to achieve the cure for addiction. Now, satisfaction. If we are having trouble reaching the level of satisfaction, this is the very basement or bottom layer. We need to get help. We need to be able to offer help to somebody. If we cannot get satisfaction, that is where the irrational thoughts and behaviors, that is where the denial is the strongest. Okay, because there's no peace there. There's no enjoyment whatsoever. There is only need if we can't at least get to satisfaction. So we need to get some help if we are having trouble in this area. We need to find somebody that can help us balance out our serotonin and dopamine. There are multiple different ways of doing this. As a chiropractor, my focus is always helping the body to do this naturally and on its own. However, there is a time and a place for medical intervention. One of the most common reasons that our serotonin and dopamine balance gets out is inflammation that's left unchecked. Inflammation, they did a recent study in the past few years, and they found that one of the most common symptoms that goes along with depression is actually brain inflammation. So whenever our body is inflamed, what that is that's the physical body sending a chemical signal to the brain, trying to get the mind's attention, saying, we need healing. We need to regenerate. We need to repair. And unless we stop doing what's causing us to overwork beyond the point of being able to repair and generate, we're going to end up wearing out. Now, inflammation is the root cause of heart disease. It's the root cause of cancer. It's the root cause of metabolic diseases like diabetes. So inflammation is really the leading cause of death in our society. But inflammation is not bad. Without inflammation, we can't heal. Without inflammation, our body can't send that signal to our brain and get our mind's attention and say healing needs to happen. Send out the white blood cells, send out the immune system, stimulate the stem cells so that we can regenerate. So inflammation is not bad unless it's left unchecked and it continues on and on and on, and we are not able to heal. We're not able to repair. We're not able to regenerate. Another very important component to check if we're having trouble getting into the level of satisfaction is our mitochondrial health. Our mitochondria are the part of our cells that generate energy. If we can't generate enough cellular energy, we're not going to be able to heal and repair and regenerate. We're not going to be able to do the things that bring joy, that bring love into our lives. If we're not able to generate enough energy, enough potential for work, then we're really not supposed to feel satisfied. So some of the keys, the basic fundamental components for mitochondrial health are sunshine, being hydrated, and being connected to the earth. Those are the foundational components. If we don't have those in place, then focusing on all the other stuff is not really going to get us anywhere. So if you're not sure if your mitochondria are functioning really well, get outside, get hydrated, and get in the sun. If you know that your mitochondria are functioning really, really well, get outside, get hydrated, and get in the sun. This is the most fundamental basics building block for life to exist. And we as humans are like, nah, I don't need that. It's much more comfortable inside in front of my TV, in front of our TV. I wonder if that's why this generation is the first generation in history that our life expectancy is actually less than our parents. Maybe. I don't know. Try it. But again, seek help in this area. Having somebody that specializes in mitochondrial health is a valuable person to have on your health team. The next one is your nervous system. Again, we talked a little bit about this before. If your nervous system is mechanically distorted, you're not going to be able to experience or express the fullness of life. And it's going to be very, very challenging, if not impossible, to at least get to satisfaction. So find a really skilled chiropractor. Next would be gut health. Most of our neurotransmitters, believe it or not, are actually made in our gut, even though they're used in a lot of part of our brains. Our enteric nervous system, our gut nervous system, has almost as many neurons, nerve cells, as our brain. We have an amazing nutritionist here at Organic Living Chiropractic, Caroline, and she and I go round and round about this because she says the gut is the first brain. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure my first brain's up here. But hey, I'll let you talk to her about that if you want to. And the last component of this is PTC, or present time consciousness. If our focus is not in the here and the now, we are setting ourselves up for failure. When we spend too much time focusing on the future, that's going to lead to anxiety. When we spend too much time focusing on the past, that's going to lead to depression. So anybody with depression or anxiety literally has an addiction to staying outside of the present moment and staying either in the future or in the past. So developing a practice such as mindfulness or something that brings you into the here and the now, so that you're fully present in this moment. The future does not exist, and neither does the past. The only real reality is the present moment. That's all there ever is. And so anytime that we are ignoring that reality, we're actually asking for some sort of negative consequence. And if we can't stop doing that, that's where the addiction comes in. So this next component, once we've been able to at least reach satisfaction, would be peace. The key to peace is to consciously decide to create a willingness to be uncertain. Life is uncertain. If we are just waiting around for everything to be perfect before we feel peace, we're going to be waiting around forever. Because if we really look, we're always going to be able to find something wrong. We're always going to be able to find some problem to fix. So if we're waiting for outside circumstances, we're not really going to be able to be at peace. Peace is something that we create on the inside, something we create ourselves, regardless of the circumstances. And peace is a very valuable gift, not only to ourselves, but to everyone around us. So, in order to have peace, we have to have a good match between our internal environment and our external environment. Okay. If we're in the wrong environment, if we're in the wrong job, if we're in the wrong relationship, if we're doing the wrong things for ourselves, life is supposed to suck. This is supposed to wake us up. This is the value of pain and discomfort, to wake us up to the fact that something needs to change. And if it doesn't change, we're going to end up wearing ourselves out faster than we can regenerate. The next component of peace is our beliefs. Now, belief is very, very different from faith. Many people confuse the two. Belief is something that we create. Now, we may create it by permission. Someone tells us something, and then we take that on as a belief. We grew up in a family, and this is the way our family did things all the time. And so we just have this belief, right? But that's something that we create. And if our belief is counter to reality, we are setting ourselves up for a lot of pain. We're setting ourselves up, not only us, we're setting up those around us for a lot of pain. Okay. So look at your life. Is your life just an expression of joy and bliss, and you are just loving life, and everyone around you is improving? If so, your beliefs are probably pretty aligned with reality. But if life is hard, if life is a struggle, if life is pain, if we're pushing, and if everyone around us is experiencing the pain of life, guess what? You have some beliefs that need to be re-examined. So ask yourself, is what I think to be true actually true? Like, have I really tested it? Have I really gone out and done the internal work to see, is this belief actually true? Or is it simply unexamined? And it's something that we've just taken on, a pre-program from the outside that we're operating on that's not in line with reality. It is okay to change your beliefs. It is actually a sign of intelligence to be able to change your mind whenever you get confronted with reality. Okay. Another component of peace, and this is something, a service that we offer at Organic Living Chiropractic, is a pain integration experience. Okay. We're not integrating, we're not taking the pain and making it a part of ourselves. We're recognizing that what pain is energy and information that's not able to be utilized correctly. And so it's experienced as something that we don't like. By making a connection with that energy and information, by building a relationship with it, by really getting to know it, we have the ability to change very rapidly how we experience and express that energy and information. And we can take pain that's been there for years and turn it into a breakthrough experience in a very short period of time. So if you're interested in this, ask us. If you're a practice member of Organic Living Chiropractic, you can contact our office. You'll have our contact information at the end. Or you can go out and find a very highly educated network spinal practitioner, or I believe it's called an alchemy mentor or an alchemy coach. And alchemy is something that you can learn about at the website epienergetics.com. The last thing that I'd like to bring up as far as peace goes is a concept in a book called Soulcraft. And in Soulcraft, it's really a book about getting to know who you truly are up underneath all the programming. Who are you at your core? One concept that they bring up is called the loyal soldier, the recognition that all of these parts of ourselves that bring us into these patterns that get repeated, even though there's negative consequences, they all have a purpose. They're all trying to accomplish something. Now, those parts of us may not be able to accomplish this in a really efficient way. As a matter of fact, they're accomplishing it in a very inefficient and a very destructive way. But if we can connect with those parts of ourselves, if we can get down to what really am I getting out of this addiction? What am I getting out of this compulsion? What's the real reward? Is it a sense of justice? Is it a sense of self esteem? I feel good about myself. Is it a sense of safety or security? It's predictable. Whenever I screw up in this way, I know exactly what's going to happen after that. And that gives me a sense of safety and security to know what's going to happen. So, all of these disruptive behaviors that we do, they all have a purpose. And so, by identifying what is the real reward, that gives us the opportunity to give that to ourselves in a healthy way, in a beneficial way. So, whenever we're identifying a behavior or whenever we're using an outside substance that is becoming a problem, what's the payoff? What are you really getting out of it? And what happens whenever you win or lose? So, the next step up from peace is joy. Really, what is it that lights you up? What is it that you lose track of time with? That's a key to finding your joy. But in order to do that, you have to know who you are. So ask yourself, if you got your finger cut off, would you still be a you? Would you still be the same you without your pinky finger? What about your arm? If you had your pinky finger and your arm chopped off, would you still be you? What about your leg? Pinky finger, arm, and leg. Would you still be you? How much of your body would you have to lose before you would not be you? Okay. What about your mind? If you lost the ability to do math, would you still be you? If you lost all of your memories from the past, would you still be you? Who are you underneath all of the programming from your genetics? Who are you underneath all the programming from the family that you were raised in? If you were born in China, you would have a totally different belief system. You would have totally different memories. You would have totally different life experiences, but you would still be you. So, who is that? What is that that has these memories? Who is that or what is that that has this body, that has these beliefs, that has these traditions? Who are you? If you know real you, it's much easier to find out what lights you up. So, one of the keys to joy, once you know who you really are, and this is a lifetime process, don't get me wrong, but it's an extremely rewarding lifetime process, as well as a very challenging lifetime process at certain times. But the reward definitely makes it worth it. But to have a healthy relationship between who you truly are and sacred other. Whenever I say sacred other, I'm talking about the environment. I'm talking about your family, your loved ones, your society, your community. I'm talking about everything that is not real you. If there is a healthy dynamic, then you have the ability to truly make things better for yourself and for other. And remember, these parts of our brain, this reward cascade is set up to reward us when we do make things better. So be able to know who you truly are, to know what your gifts are, to share those gifts is the key to experiencing true joy. So what we want to do in this, as we're discovering who we truly are, is to recognize that all of us have strengths and all of us have weaknesses, right? If we focus too much on our weaknesses, that's going to be a challenge because they're always weaknesses. Our strengths feel great to be in because we're amazing at them, and that just feels good to be amazing. So there's this 80-20 rule. Okay, we want to spend about 80% of our time and resources working in our strengths, really feeling how great it is to be amazing at something. And we want to spend about 20% of our time and resources on improving our weaknesses. Okay, because improvement feels good. Getting better at something feels amazing. All right, so be amazing 80% of the time, and then work on being amazing the other 20% of the time. And lastly, in joy is sensuality. Now, I know a lot of people, whenever I bring up that word sensuality, the first thing they jump to is sex. And don't get me wrong, sex is very sensual. However, sensuality is experiencing through our senses. Now, we don't really know what the outside world is like. The only thing that we know is what our senses tell us about the outside world. Senses are our way of engaging with non-self. And we all know about our five senses: smell, sight, touch, sound, taste. But there's a lot of other senses, like the sense of balance, or the sense of excitement, or there's a lot of other senses out there. So just remember that really taking the time to experience life through your senses is an amazing way to practice present time consciousness, but also a great way to discover who you truly are and what lights you up. Now, the last step in this, the highest step, is love. And love is actually what you are at your core. Spoiler alert. But knowing this, embodying being love, is the most rewarding way of being. It's not very promoted. I don't think it's promoted in most societies around the world. What's promoted is selfishness and greed and experiencing ourselves as separate and in lack. And therefore, we need to take and we need to grab and we need to push others down. Right? This comes from a belief in scarcity. This comes from a belief that we don't live in an infinite universe, which is the actual reality. But once we get beyond this belief, we can get into the fact scientifically that everything is interconnected. Everyone is interconnected. So love is unity, it's oneness, celebrating itself through the experience of seeming separateness. If we really treated others as if they were ourselves, if everyone did that, if we treated the planet as if it was ourselves, how different would this world be? Now, this is a challenge. Most people, they can't even wrap their mind around the concept of love. They can, pleasure, passion, feeling good, those butterflies that come along with being in a romantic relationship, infatuation. These are common experiences. But true love is fairly rare to meet a truly loving person. And this is going to become a lot more common as things continue and life continues to move forward and humanity continues to move forward. So for most of us that have a little bit of a challenge with truly embodying love, one of the secret hacks is acceptance. Acceptance is the gateway to love. Anytime that we are judgmental, anytime that we label someone or something, we put it into this box and we say, this is what it is. we're no longer accepting that person or thing. We're no longer even experiencing that person or thing. We are now conceptualizing and thinking about that person or thing. But a thought about a person or thing is never the actual person or thing. And thoughts aren't bad, they can be very beneficial at time. But many times, a lot of us are addicted to replacing a person or thing with a box, with a concept, with a thought, instead of accepting the unique aspect of the universe that that person or thing is, and accepting that without that person or thing, exactly as it is, whether we like it or not, the universe would not be complete. The universe would not be whole. So, true love is really about accepting reality as it is for what it is, without label or judgment, just pure experience. Love is the celebration of being and giving other people the permission to be also. It's a celebration of differences. If it were all one, if the world was just filled with a whole bunch of me's, that would be a really, really boring place. Although some people I would like to make more like me, the recognition that its uniqueness, its specialness, that most of us deeply, deeply desire. By giving that, we're actually opening ourselves up to receive and to be that. Being love is the ultimate freedom, because when we are in love with everything, nothing has the power to make us feel bad. And that is the one takeaway that I hope that you receive from tonight's class. Is any time that we are caught up in a compulsion, anytime that we are caught up with addiction, anytime we're caught up with doing something that has negative consequences and yet we can't stop, at the root of that, we have given our power over to something outside of ourselves. We're hoping that that something will be our savior because some other something is the villain. And anytime we do that, we're ignoring what's really going on, which is we're not being the best version of ourselves. We're not accepting the power and responsibility to be love and to be loving. So I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. This was a labor of love by me. I am in the process of getting a postdoctoral degree in addictionology and compulsive disorders. And by learning this stuff, it just lit me up because this is the science of happiness. And if we could really have compassion for those that have a challenge experiencing happiness at will. If we could learn this information and apply it in our lives, then not only could we be happy on a regular basis, but we could spread that happiness all throughout the world. And if every part of humanity was truly happy, if every part of humanity was truly at peace, was truly joyful, was truly in love, all of the problems that we're experiencing in our society right now would be solved very, very quickly. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can write those into the chat right now. You can, if you're watching this later on, you can contact our office. There's our phone number there. You can check us out on our website, organiclivingchiropractic.com. You can email us, organiclivingchiropractic@gmail.com. You can check us out on Facebook. Please like our page. You can check us out on YouTube. We have tons and tons of really valuable hours of information on a multitude of topics, very similar to tonight's topic.